and Nelson Bahati as well. If they could please come, and then we'll get our conversation going. Green what is the theme? And the question is how to simplify climate change stories to local audiences. Good afternoon. You're very welcome. So right. So here's how I'm going to try and suggest that we do this panel for Nelson and Blanche and Sarah. I'm going to read out a whole barrage of questions, and then you're going to write them down. And between the three of you, you'll have a very brief conversation to try and answer those questions. So you debate, engage, talk to one another. I will stay out of the way so that you guys can be able to have the conversation. This will help us keep time, and then we'll bring in everyone else. And the questions around this, of course, we know what the issue is. I'm very sure climate change definitely has become a big deal. We saw what happened in Spain recently. Even if you are a climate change denier, there are certain things that you can't deny. We know what happened, I think, in Dubai about sometime last year. In Kampala last week, I think some of us had to swim to work. Which day was that? Monday, I think, last week. Is there anyone here who had to swim to work last week? I definitely had to abandon the car somewhere and figure out a way to, you know. So we can clearly tell these things are not this way many years ago. Now they have changed. So what do we do about that? So how do we ensure that communities and grassroots are ready for that? My gauge for climate change is always my mother. If anyone here has a mother who is in the village, you know that whenever you call your mom, the first thing you talk about is, how is the weather? Right? It's not small talk. For them, it's life and death. The beans have dried. We don't know what to do. So I called about 2 months ago and she says, Mwana wanje, the banana plantation is down. We had a proper hailstorm. It came and took down half the plantation. True story from where I come from. So clearly, these things are happening. When we simplify this information for people like my mom, who is in Kashari, and the rest of her neighbors, it becomes easy for them to be able to make informed decisions about the issues, how to rearrange their farming, for example, how do they safeguard their crops against the effects of climate change, but also how do we ensure that the local media in the rural areas, for example, for me, that would be my focus, are able to then speak into these things and help people understand what's happening. So the questions to you, to the three of you, how do we ensure that there's accurate reporting around climate and environment change? How do we balance the doom and gloom stories with solution-based reporting? Because if you listen to particular people, they'll tell you the world is ending and we're going to become like the days of Noah. It will be a flood. We are done. How do we balance that with the need to say, what can we do to safeguard ourselves against the effects of climate change? How do we incorporate citizen journalism into what we're doing, again, to fight against the effects of climate change? And then how do we navigate the complexes of climate change and the science around it with our, I don't want to say uneducated, but maybe uninformed citizenry? How do we try and balance that? And then in terms of reporting around climate change, what are our roles as media? What are we doing about it? And how do we, more than anything else, how do we simplify our reporting for climate change? And how do we balance our reporting for everything else that we do and finding space to report about environment and climate change? Again, in Uganda context, when we talk about climate change, some of the things are because of global warming, whatever you want to call it. Some of them are down to us. We're reclaiming wetlands. How do we empower citizens to be able to do something about that? So these are the sort of questions that I would like the three of you to be able to answer. I guess I'll start with you, Sarah, and then you can be able to pick it up with Blanche and Nelson and have a conversation around this amongst yourselves. Try not to make it a monologue, actually have a conversation. Would like to hear you guys bounce things off of each other for about 20, 25 minutes. and then the rest of us will chip in. So over to you, starting with you, Sarah, and then we'll go to the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, yes, my name once again is Sarah Maweded. I work at BBC as the producer content, and I work at UBC as content producer, and my background has been radio. I do radio. So I would like to begin off by talking about something briefly about the climate change. You know, as media, how do we report climate change? We do report as usual, but there is something that we have to do to go an extra mile to do it. First of all, media, if you're not skilled yourself, you are not going to tell these stories well, and you are going to mislead or to give half-baked information to the audience or audiences. We need, first of all, as media practitioners, to get skilled, to pick interest in this area. Why? Because climate change is it's a global debate that is on the global scene, and everyone is talking about climate change. And how do we report? We have to report by, of course, imploring or applying the ethics to do this, to give information that is required, and to give reliable information, to give accurate or content. Let me not talk like I'm talking as maybe a print media person alone, but generally, let's talk generally. If you do radio, how do you access this information? How do you package this information to the audiences? And my interest here is the real, in the rural person. How does this information reach out to this person? So how do we do the information? Of course, first of all, when you have the skill, get the gadgets that will require you to gather this information or to get the content. And if you're a radio person, you need a recorder, you need the gadgets. If you are camera, you are print media or photojournalist or social media, you know how we do it. And now, how do you prepare yourself, of course, to go there? You need, of course, facilitation to reach out. You need to know how to access information. You need to reach out to sources of information. And these sources of information, for example, in climate change, we've had the opportunity to at least or train or skill ourselves. They are telling us that the best information that can help us to disseminate the best information out there is this kind of information that has been researched. So when information is researched, is reliable. And where is this researched information? Talk about the universities. They do a lot of research, and universities have the academia. The universities have educated people. They are sponsored. They take up initiatives to research. So this is the kind of information that we should reach out to, use to tell these stories. Because you cannot just go to like Google and get information out there. People will ask you, where do you find such information? If anybody can go online and find the information. But if you have this authority talking from that point of view of research, this is the best information that we have to tell, because it is reliable and the people will depend on it for decision making, will depend on it to change their livelihoods, will depend on it to change their lives and to create curiosity within themselves that climate change is here. We need to change the way we do it, because climate change is not coming out of the blue. Climate change is occurring because of the activities that human beings are doing a disservice to the environment, to create to bring about the changes that we do experience. Then when you reach out there, who do you actually look up to? For example, you have got, let me mention, like the research information is one of the sources to get the content, to gather the content. But who else? We are forgetting the real person in the picture. These are the people who feel the impacts of climate change first, or who feel it, more. They are hit hard. And these are the people who are in the rural areas. Say, for example, the farmers. If a farmer has grown his coffee or a garden of maize and swept away, this person is going to be affected so badly, to the extent that the person will have no food, the livelihood will be affected, the person will have no means of educating the children and the like. So we have to reach out to these people to tell their stories. And also, apart from farmers, there are also local initiatives. These people feel the impacts first. They see maybe insects are attacking their gardens. They see they are losing out, and they are the ones who are the first people to tell that, you see, we have been invaded by locusts that are destroying our gardens. And actually, when you reach out there, you will not miss seeing them doing something by themselves. Traditionally, people have their indigenous knowledge of how to go about some of these things. So you'll see them, maybe they are trying this kind of initiative of, maybe, for example, it is a prolonged drought that has struck them and their crops are not bearing. These are the people who you'll get that they have devised means of maybe tapping rainwater, harvesting rainwater, maybe to harvest, to irrigate their crops. These are the people, whether they are designed programs coming from the top, going down. These people, if they are involved, believe me, they have something to contribute. And if it is participatory, and if they are involved, they will share with you what best and how best this can work for them. Then you build on them. At this moment, I beg to stop here to give platform to my other colleagues.
Thank you for your submission. I would touch the question of accuracy. How do we report climate issues accurately, and the question of the complexity. So one of the key challenges that I think we face in our newsrooms is that climate change is a science bit. It's a science journalism bit, and our newsrooms, our universities, they don't prepare students they don't prepare journalists to be, they don't prepare students to be science journalists. So as Sarah said, you have to take a personal initiative and learn. The opportunity that there is a lot of content out there that you can read. It's very scientific, but you need to read and then try to understand it in your own way. Try to decode it in your own language, this simple language, so that you can find ways of relating it to the challenges that people face. So I don't know of us who are here who can differentiate the COP that was in Colombia and the COP that is going to be in Azerbaijan, as well as the COP that is going to be in Saudi Arabia next month. I don't know how many can do that. There are 3 COPs. One of them is focusing on biodiversity, the other one is focusing on climate change, and the other one is focusing on desertification. The other two, apart from this of climate change, which is at 29, the other one is, they are still at 16. They call them COP16. So those are some of the things that we need to understand. Then, do we understand the terminologies like carbon emissions? And how can a person report about carbon emissions? So once we read this research that has been produced, we get information that we can translate to them for our audiences. And there are huge opportunities for climate change reporting, especially if you kickstart yourself and reach somewhere, many people are going to pick you up. There are so many opportunities. So I think we need to start ourselves as journalists by reading, getting this information, and then trying to do some kind of reporting. Once people see that you have started on something, they will pick up on you. And the other question that I want to speak about briefly, the question of doom and gloom. And what is important for us journalists is that we shouldn't turn our subjects into victims when we are reporting whatever difficult challenges they are facing, because we are dealing with subjects who are really who are not victims. Don't deal with these people like the way you are dealing with a corrupt official has stolen $1 billion shillings. If a person has stolen $1 billion shillings, yes, that person has stolen it, and you need to be tough on that person. But if you go to the villages and you try to interview people who are facing all these challenges, we should not turn them into victims. And to pick up on the issue that Mwine talked about when he was opening this panel, I happen to come from a place that has not had rain since May up to now. And we're already supposed to get rain at the end of August. August, September, October. And now we are in November. We have not had rain. So, and people have all these sorts of conspiracy theories. They think they are rainmakers who are holding the rain. They are always looking for people to beat who they think are rainmakers. But the reality is that people have destroyed wetlands. There is a big wetland that passes through our area. People have destroyed it. They have cut down all the trees which were there. So that's the effect of the human activities in that area for 10 years. So if you go as a journalist who have read or have knowledge about the connection between deforestation and climate change, you have knowledge about the connection between destroying wetlands and climate change, you also need to pass out this information to people as you do your reporting and say, evidence and research says ABCD, rather than letting them hang on to their myth of there is a rainmaker, there is ABCD. So I feel in that way, you are not turning your subjects into victims, but you are telling a story that is human-centered, that helps these people to learn and appreciate, rather than leaving them as victims. Over to you, Elijah.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy and glad that we are discussing about an issue that is indeed very topical and relevant. My name is Nelson Bahati. I work at Makerere University. I'm going to speak in more of an academic kind of I will like give an academic kind of perspective about climate change and how the media covers climate change. And first of all, I want to say sorry to Ben, who said that their banana plantation back home got, taken away by a hailstorm. But I'm also very curious and wondering whether the mother knows actually why the hailstorms maybe appeared, and have there been hailstorms over a decade ago or something. I want to say sorry to Ben on that note. But I think if Ben, you should go back home and tell your mom, try to explain to her the science behind the changes and things that are happening around the globe now. Now, from a scholarly perspective, globally, among the challenges that are actually currently facing the world, climate change is really one of them. Looking at political instabilities, of course, the loss of biodiversity, and looking at food security, and a lot of things. So climate change really is top there. And one of the challenges is that before we go even to have a media perspective, we try to distance ourselves from this topical and relevant issue, climate change. Recently, I was in a class, I was teaching, and my student told me that actually a colleague presented, and her speech was about climate change. And this student told me that I find that topic very boring. And indeed, to me, that was not the first time I heard something like that, because I'm aware there are climate deniers. There are people who think that climate is not happening and it shouldn't be happening. But something to assure you today is that actually, according to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change 2023 report, they show you that actually climate change is happening, and one of the reasons why it is happening is because of human activities. And what are these human activities? Of course, this is things to do with agriculture, like entirely farming, and the fuels we use every day, because all of these activities lead to the accumulation of CO2s in the atmosphere, the CH4, the NO2, all these gases. When they go up there, they try to form some kind of greenhouse gas effect, which actually attracts the heat, and then we start burning. Then from the media perspective, the media need to actually make these issues relevant only when it understands how to make them relevant. Researchers have shown, in Uganda specifically, to start with, research on climate change and how the media covers climate change is really minimal. There has not been thorough research done, and I only know two scholars, and that's Professor Goret Nasanga Linda and Dr. Brian Semju from Makerere University, who have really covered how the media is trying to cover climate change. And their studies, both in 2020, that's for Professor Nasanga, and 2013 for Dr. Brian, show that the challenges the media is facing when it comes to accuracy and reporting climate change is that the issues that emerge is the language the media uses to report climate change. The media assumes that since climate change is a bit, or it's a topic like other topics, that's how the media assumes, does not go ahead like to look at a way of packaging this news that the local people understand, or the media thinks like how other news thinks also climate change should be reported like that, which is not. Because the language is complicated, someone is reporting climate change, with all its unsurmountable, challenges that are challenging humans rightly. And the language used, the science is too much. Someone is talking about CO2, NO2, CH4, and doesn't understand. Someone is talking about greenhouse gases up there. Someone doesn't make sense of it. But how should the media then bring these issues to the table and report them clearly so that the people can understand? I'll try to suggest that you journalists that are here today and media owners, if you want to start reporting climate change clearly so that the local audiences whom I care about, because whenever I speak about climate change, which is my passionate area of interest, I want to look at it from really a local perspective, then from the academic point of view, and then from the media perspective. Why don't you change the narrative? Why don't you go to visual kind of storytelling? I used to watch videos. There was, I don't know, called Katoto. There was a videos of Katoto. I don't know, why was a comedian? I don't know. So I loved those videos so much, listening to Katoto, and, you know, why don't you report climate change in such a way? Like report, you know, rising sea levels and report the biodiversity loss and try to show people what happens in such kind of way. And also, why don't you simplify the language, break down the science, reach to people, break down the science. But also, another problem we find in the research of media reporting on climate change is that you journalists, you are not balancing the issue. Even in your sources, when you're looking for sources, you only go for experts, you go for Nelson, the elites who know about climate change, but also pick a local perspective. Try to see how do they understand this issue. When they have a flood, you know, the scorching droughts, what do people think about these things happening? And then also be solution-based. Like right now, solution journalism is really taking, you know, step in the future of journalism. So be solution-based. Don't just be reporting information, because climate change, as an issue, is not just like other issues. It's somehow different. So look for a way of making it really look clean.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask each of you a very quick question to respond to, and if you can do it in about a minute or so, that would be great. And then we'll bring in the rest of the people. So for you, Sarah, because of how important radio is and your radio footprint across the country is quite strong, what are you doing to train the younger journalists to be climate change aware in their preparation for reporting? For Blanche, you've just won an award. Tell us a little bit about that and what that has been like, what the experience was, what does that mean, what are the implications going forward? And then for Mr. Bahati, again, you've been doing quite a number of investigative pieces. What are if you had to pick one or two key things that have come from that for you, what would those be that you can share with the teams here? That, again, I know you've already touched on some of the stuff from what you've been sharing, but specifically from your investigatives, what are the maybe one or two key takeaways that would be good to take home? So we'll start with you, Sarah. What are you doing to train younger journalists to be a bit more climate change aware? We'll hear about Blanche's award-winning experiences, and then what Bahati has been doing as well, and then we'll bring in the rest of the plenary. So we'll start with Sarah, and then we'll go across.
Part of my role at UBC is to train. I train the upcoming journalists, the young people, especially who are joining, because there has been a lot of retirement taking place in that institution. And many young people are being recruited, they are joining us. Also, year in, year out, like 2 times in a year, I receive interns from all the institutions, be it universities and those that teach at lower levels. I train them. Indeed, as if we were together. Recently, when we were seeing off the lot that trained with us between June to August, I was telling them, showing them the way that, you know, journalism today is this kind of journalism that is challenging us a lot and a lot. We are so much flooded out there. The media has so many people, and many are yet to come up. They are graduating tomorrow, the other day, and the other day. I'm just trying to train you, or to change your mind, that is, think out of the box. Think up country, don't think Kampala. Think up country where you can maybe embrace your localities, feel good to disseminate information to your people and in your local language. And these are the areas which I feel, because we've been there and we know, these are the areas that are pertinent. Focus on areas like climate change. Focus on areas to do with agriculture. They say it is still the backbone of our country. But still, it is very important because people say, is it still the background? Because the president is talking about industrialization, talking about what, coffee which doesn't feed. It still feeds us because you can sell it, get money if you don't have a crop home, and you buy food. So I tell them all this, and I tell them the best way to disseminate this information surrounding climate change and agriculture is to do it in your local language. There is nothing I've enjoyed all my practice, all the years along this chain, that I've enjoyed than presenting in the local language. There is a way how people feel you are with them. There is a way they feel you, and the message even trickles down very well. But of course, when you do it, you have to do it technically. You have to be technical, you have to be skilled. One of the ladies, younger ladies, I was asking her, which tribe are you? At first, I'm a Munyankole. Then at last, you know, I'm from Bundibujo. Then I challenged her, because of course, with all this time, you get to know areas, geographical locations. Said Bundibujo, these are people who speak a language called Rwamba, Luwisi, Rwamba. So I was asking her, do you speak Rwamba? Ah, madam, me, I can't. Me, I don't even speak. I try Runyankole. Then I was like, can you appreciate, can you really feel yourself that you are a Mwamba? She said, I cannot even read. And even if I'm together, then I was like, what are your interests? That yes, you have interested us, we can handle climate change. But I feel like me, I cannot even read in my language. I want English. Then we try to actually encourage them, and we train them how best we do it.
Yeah. So again, for the younger people, maybe this might not make too much sense to you because you normally speak English as a main language. But for those of us who are older, Prof will tell you that naturally, you think in your local language, you have an encoder in your brain that translates into English, and then that's what comes out of your mouth. But natively, I think in Runyankore, and then I translate, and then you hear English. That's, I don't know if anyone, yeah, you feel me, eh? So I think it's very important that you mentioned that people understand, because when you speak their language locally, you're being very, very relevant. Yeah. So we'll hear from Blanche and then from Nelson, and then we'll take some feedback, and then we'll go into our next panel on elections, which is our last big panel before we wrap up with media viability.
Okay, thank you. I want to use my minute or two, rather than talking about an hour, I want to talk about Challenge Nelson. I didn't know that Nelson is a lecturer in the Department of Journalism at Makerere, and he has turned us journalists into victims. So I really want to challenge him and ask him, how does the university prepare students to be good climate reporters? Asking us to do so much is like picking me and throwing me in the middle of Lake Victoria when I have never, when I don't know how to swim, and you say swim to the shores. Yeah, I feel that universities that are training journalists need to do much in opening student sciences. We enjoyed doing political science. We enjoyed doing learning sociology. That's Karl Marx and what during our time. Yeah. But now is the time for you to connect journalism students, the School of Forestry, the School of Agriculture, to the College of Natural Sciences, so that they can appreciate and be well grounded in science. You don't need to get a lot of journalists speak interest. If you get 5 or 6, for me, that's good enough. If you get those 6 in the newsrooms, they do better reporting. They have been grounded in science because it's a science subject. They know those terminologies and they do a better job. Yeah. And for me, that's my humble ask from anyone who teaches students at the university. Thank you.
Makes perfect sense. But also congratulations on the award.
You're welcome.
You earned it, so you deserve we should give him a hand clap. How many awards do you have? Me, I don't have any yet, so Right, Mr. Bahati.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. This is a very good counterattack, but I'm going to be a little bit very defensive. When my student asked me that, when she told me that climate change is a boring topic, actually, when I went back at home, I felt sleep. I sat on my bed and I was trying to think about how are we going to do all this, but make sure that journalism reports climate change and we cover climate change in a good way, accuracy, objectivity, and everything. And I thought about why not task the Ministry of Education and also journalism teaching institutions to inculcate, in their curriculum, climate change courses.
Yeah.
Why don't we start from there, from education perspective? Why don't we teach young people how to report climate change? And I think empowering young people and giving them knowledge about climate change, these journalism students, because they're the future journalists,
Yeah.
and they're the journalists of tomorrow. So they will have this knowledge and they will go out there when they know and report climate change, and climate change will become very close to them. It will be a very dear and sweet topic. And of course, we will start hearing, there will be a change in narrative. That's what I say, Ben. Thank you.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. Big hand clap for our panel. And so let's hear from you now. Right, I see some hands. Where's the microphone? So 1, 2. Idris. Anyone else? Can we agree? Okay, 4 over there. So we'll do those 4 and then we'll go to the next.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon. Sir, I'm glad to see you after 4 or 5 years.
Please don't tire to introduce yourself. There are people who don't know you.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. My name is Noah Omuya. What I am carrying here is one of the products of climate change reporting. In 2020, I did a report with Sarah. We collaborated. I don't work with UBC. And that report was about the surging of water at Lake Victoria. And it contributed to the award Info Nile won on climate reporting in Africa, science reporting. Thank you. So during that project, I realized that most times as journalists, the stories we tell are not enough. Most of the information is left out. Little information that we publish, that we report about, is not accessed by many people. Even if it's accessed, people read it as news. And news is what you consume now. Tomorrow you have another issue happening. Now, I said, why don't we start telling climate change stories in another way? If you put in a book, thinking outside the box, as Sarah said, thinking of how to inculcate this in our curriculum, as Bahat just said. To me, this is what I did. I sat down, I wrote down this simple book. It's focusing on one thing. It's talking about the depletion of the forest cover. But I'm telling it using a local man's perspective. I'm trying to reduce the jargon. When I was at the Media Challenge Fellowship, we're taught that how should we tell African stories the African way. And to me, I think that the best way we can talk about the climate change stories is by telling the climate change story the African way. Yeah, so that's my submission for now.
Thank
There's
you
a
very
copy
much.
here in case. Can I
I'm
allow
sure.
me?
Yes, of course.
In case anyone needs a copy, it's simple. I'm giving it out at 10,000. Sarah is the first buyer now, and all the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Right behind you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, the panelists. I'm glad that 2 of the panelists have been my students, and one of them is an award winning journalist. So
you are an award-winning lecturer.
Yes, so you can clap for me as well.
By association.
Now, regarding the question which Mr. Bahati was struggling with, which Blanchet talked about, in our new curriculum at Makerere, which we are implementing currently, we have components of climate change. I don't want to say that we teach a bachelor's in climate change, a master's in climate change, because these are These are very, very big areas which you cannot cover in just a journalism curriculum. As my colleague has just said, the book he has written is really about dealing with the climate change through forestry, just through forestry. But there are so many aspects of climate change. So we have those components where we emphasize really using simple language, linking climate change to other development issues, it not being isolated, using appropriate photos and really focusing on ways which communities communicate so that people are able to understand climate change. But what I really wanted to talk about is that we need to think about which kind of issues do communities talk about when it comes to climate change, when they are participating, which issues do different communities talk about? If you have to bring that into gender perspectives, if you're talking about climate change, it's very rare that women talk about land issues when I talk about climate change. Why? Because communities, meaning culture, most of our cultures don't give women land. So women have less interest in issues that have to do with protecting the environment by working on how, by using smart ways of using the land. So we need to talk about some of those issues. And we also need to talk about issues to do with which sources do we consult when we talk about climate change. Yes, we can talk to the experts, but in many cases, the people who really talk about climate change may not be experts at all levels. Sometimes you have pastors, you have bishops, you have sheikhs. All these are talking about climate change in different perspectives, and we need to capture their perspectives in addition to the experts. So we shouldn't leave out the local person.
Yeah.
And lastly, something which I came across recently, and I was talking to Mr. Benson Oluka earlier on, when I was meeting several journalists in northern Uganda around May this year, I came across a situation which Mr. Musinguzi Blanchet was wanted to deny, that journalists are not victims. I came across a situation where many journalists have been victims of climate change because they're talking about being victims of the heat. When it's too hot, journalists equally suffer. But also came across journalists whose houses were erased by floods. So in that case, is a journalist a source of information? Is a journalist a reporter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the conflict of interest comes in there.
Yeah.
But very lastly, there is an issue of many journalists dealing with climate change, also dealing with the trauma. Sometimes after seeing so many malnourished children, after meeting farmers whose gardens have been destroyed by either drought or by climate change, after seeing fishermen crying for lack of a catch, over time, that weight comes upon the journalists, and therefore it's very important to pay attention to the life of a journalist so that they can continue reporting this subject better. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very well put. Okay, and then we'll go to Idris. Oh, actually there was one more person, and then we'll finish with Idris.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, the panel. My name is Derek Wandera. I'm a journalist and have been in the space of climate change and environment reporting for some time. Miss Moira there is one of my fellow reporter and Blanchet. I think one thing from me will so much again emphasize and re-emphasize Blanche's call to the academia that there is very little preparation that's given to journalists on these matters, not just these, but across board. I have dealt with a number of interns from universities who come to do internship, and you find that the student hardly knows anything that happens in a newsroom or in a particular sector that they want to handle. I think one of, like Blanche has suggested, one of the things that would be very important is during the course of 4 years, can these students from even the first semester or whenever, can they be attached to something that is tangible to journalism, the real crude journalism, such that when they get to those media houses, they do not appear to be very clueless. And we have gone through this system. I know that most of the things we have done as journalists, we've taught ourselves on job, and our students who are still in school, it's important that the lecturers in this room can then take up the fact that they need to interact with real journalism, apart from the theoretical journalism that they do, and apart from those very short internship spans that they get. And I know that Makerere is trying to do it, but can we have them span to the other institutions, I think.
Thank you very much. Finally, we'll hear very, 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 very briefly from Idris.
Thank you. My name is Idris Chigundu from Beg Media, once again. I would like to thank the panelists, I think, for the discussion. But there's one thing I want to emphasize, and this does not only apply to climate change reporting. There seems to be a sentiment that universities or academic institutions need to do this and that to prepare young people for whatever field of journalism they're going to go in. But I also urge anyone who's interested in becoming a reporter in any field to also take some initiative to learn more. I think there's only so much that these training institutions can do. Journalism is already very wide. I mean, if I wanted to be a business reporter, if I wanted to report about culture, if I wanted to report about football and sports, you get it? Are we asking for specialized courses for all that? Because like issues of climate change and with the growth of internet and social media, I think there is no excuse for today's young journalists to say that I don't have information about this, about climate change, because, I mean, all this information, in my view, I think is available. You can only get guidance from editors and people like Blanche who are experts in data journalism. But really, I mean, some of us started out in political reporting. No one really taught me about what a constitution is or something. It also has to be, because in journalism, it's like you're doing a favor to the profession to cover a certain area. No, I think that is too much babysitting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Idris. So, because Idris is a very good journalist, he has to try and be very tactical in the way he says it. So I'm going to try and say what he is saying in as uncouth a manner as I can compose myself to say. Idris is saying that our young journalists need to stop being lazy. We're being very honest, right? That's what I'm. No, you can clap if you agree with me, because that's what I'm hearing. And I don't think you could be any closer to the truth than that. I always find myself very disturbed. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, that I get to MC a lot of events. And so you do this event and there's a minister or a PS or a CEO. And then normally after the event, you have one-on-ones with the principal where they're doing all these interviews. And then a journalist comes and asks a question and you're thinking, with all the... They ask such a dumb question, and even the person that they're trying to interview looks at them like, they give them like 5 seconds of can you please ask a more serious question than that? Because I don't know how to even respond to what you're asking right now.